Hi, Addison. I'm just wanting to see if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
That sounds great. Thanks.
Welcome. Are you a panelist for this meeting?
Yes, I think probably almost. I only anticipate one person kind of zooming in for this meeting. Oh, two people
Okay.
actually. I'm planning staff. Another person you'll see will be Daniel Brown, and I would like for him to be like visible. And then Holly Root Sturgeon will also be zooming in.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Hey, Allison. Sorry, Sammy.
Okay, what's up?
I would like to share screen.
As a panelist, you should be able to. I'll click your
Don't see where I can share.
Hello,
screen.
how are you?
I'm good. I'm trying to figure out.
Oh,
how
there you go.
to Share screen. Just enough, I think. Oh, you're gonna. Well, you'll be doing quite a bit.
I don't see anything.
What
It
am
would
I
let you
missing?
share your screen.
I know. I'm missing something.
She said you're a panelist and that's what it is?
I don't see, I am.
Yeah,
not-
there's only chat and,
Oh, here I go.
okay, there we go, yeah.
So this is, okay, hopefully everyone out there in video land can hear us. Hi, Polly.
Hi, everyone.
I think I have one introduction that I would like to make before we start officially. And then I'm also, Polly, asking if maybe you could flip our agenda so that Dave Schilling could go first, and then we could do administrative business towards the end, if that's okay.
Sure, that sounds fine with me. It's a pretty light agenda today.
And we do have an in-person quorum. I'll just, I can, if you want, you want to start the meeting, I can take the roll.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Tammy, you want to take roll?
Let's see, we got Debbie Reed,
Yes.
Duncan Campbell, Don Maxwell,
Here.
Don Hall,
Here.
Doug Wilson,
Here.
right? Holly Root Sturgeon,
Here.
Devin Blankenship,
Here.
and Susan Salmon, Susan Snyder Salmon. And then that makes a 7-person, 6-person in-person and 2-person virtual quorum. That's right. Okay, and then the agenda I have up here on the board. And let's see if I can make it bigger. I know there's a way to make it bigger. Anyways, what I'm hoping is that special guest David Schilling could be first to go, where we can tap him in as a resource before we get to the rest of business this evening, and then we can skip back to stuff. That's all right.
I think that sounds just fine. Is David here with us right now?
Yes.
Okay, then David, go ahead and thanks for coming today. Tell us about the demolition delay.
Well, just thought it'd be a good idea to talk about the historic preservation provisions in the code in general. We're redoing the zoning ordinance, as you know, and at that point, it's a good time to talk about whether you want to keep historic preservation as a part of the zoning code or separate it out and keep it on its own. And I can give you the history of how we got to where we are today in that regard. And then the other aspect is just the limitations on the county under the statute. And that relates to the demolition delay. So if you'd like to hear about either or both of those things, I'd be happy to cut loose.
Please.
Thank you. Well, the county adopted a zoning ordinance back in 1974 and probably copied the historic preservation ordinance from the city's ordinance that it adopted in the early 70s as well. And both of those ordinances were part of their zoning codes of the city and the county. And so that's the way it was for the longest time. In 1986, the county zoning ordinance was declared invalid due to a notification error, an advertising error. And so as a result of that, the zoning ordinance was declared void ab initio, which means it's as if it never existed. So that ordinance was readopted in 1986 after that judicial decision by Judge Kellums. And so that's the first time that our historic preservation ordinance became valid. And the reason that's important is because the state statute that regulates historic preservation, as you know, says if your ordinance was adopted before 1977, you can kind of do what you want. If it's adopted after 1977, you're stuck with this statutory language. And so the city's ordinance, which was adopted in the early 70s and has never been declared invalid, they're on a different legal footing than we are, and they have more options, I believe, with respect to historic preservation. And I think they I know in their 1983 version of the code, historic preservation was still in the zoning ordinance. In 1995, it's still mentioned as a committee of the planning commission. And then I think the subsequent zoning ordinances, they took it out. So now it's on its own.
We rewrote the ordinance
Yeah,
completely at that time,
yeah,
at which point it became a standalone.
yeah. And again, you weren't, I mean, in my understanding is you weren't stuck with the statutory scheme because you'd adopted it before 1977 and you could be more flexible.
But once we rewrote it, we were stuck with it. So the way it worked was the state enabling legislation didn't become effective in Indiana until 77. Anything written before that legislation was basically a free-for-all, doing how you feel like it. If you instituted any ordinance post the state enabling becoming legal at the state level, then you had to follow the state ordinance.
I thought that statute said you could even amend it if you had adopted it before 770 and you could amend
If you
it.
changed, my understanding was if you changed it, you had to conform to the state. And also my understanding is that the county never had a preservation ordinance until the one that we're working under now. In the 70s, there was never a review board in the county at all up until that first one was
Yeah,
adopted.
I think there was in the 74 zoning ordinance and as it was readopted.
So when did the board first, do you know when this board started? Because I feel like,
I don't remember the year, but
was it like early 2000s even?
yeah.
Yeah, we had in our 1974 version was chapter 815 of the zoning ordinance called Historic Buildings and Structures. This chapter shall be known in Southern as a Historical Buildings Preservation Ordinance. I don't know if anything ever happened.
There was never a review board.
Yeah, they probably did appoint one, but it was there. And so that's where we are. And I guess Duncan, on that state statute,
And my understanding was, just to interrupt you one more time, and hopefully not the last time, that when the county did adopt the ordinance under the new zoning ordinance that you talked about, they basically imitated the state enabling legislation. They did not adopt the city's ordinance.
that's correct. Yeah. Let me see this. I guess it doesn't really matter, but it says, if before July 1, 1977, a unit established by ordinance a commission for the purpose of historic preservation, that commission may continue to operate regardless of whether that ordinance is subsequently amended or is consistent with this chapter.
When Nancy Heaston and I were drafting a revision of that
Yeah.
74 ordinance, we went to the state and actually went to the state attorney general for an opinion. And we said, no, we follow the state.
Okay.
So I don't know if that was ever codified beyond that moment, but
Yeah, that was 1977. Wait a minute. That was from 81. Amended in 90, 82, 95, and 97. So yeah, I don't know.
anyway,
Yeah, if the city's happy with it, that's great. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But in any event, the county is stuck with the state state legislation as it is today. I think back when we adopted the most recent version back in 1996, which was effective first part of 97, at that time, the case law was saying that if you're adopting an ordinance that regulates the use and development of property and creates zones for that, then we're going to treat it as a zoning ordinance, and you have to follow the zoning ordinance procedure. And I think that's why a lot of localities had that in the zoning ordinance. And it is one of the purposes, the statutory purposes of adopting the zoning ordinance is to protect historical buildings and sites as well. So it made sense, but in the late 90s, there were some federal cases where they said, they disagreed with that. And then some of the state cases in Indiana have subsequently acknowledged that even though something might be covered under the zoning ordinance purposes, that if there's an independent statutory basis for it, that you could adopt it outside of the zoning ordinance. So back when we were doing this, that issue came up and we said, well, if we keep it in the zoning ordinance, it's going to be, the only difference would be we're going to have another hearing in front of the planning commission. So it'd take historic preservation action, it'd go to the planning commission, and then it would go to the county commissioners. If it's outside the zoning ordinance, then you still have historic preservation and then county commissioners. So there was the only drawback was, and some people would say it's not a drawback, that is to have an extra public hearing on the issue. And that I think would protect us from the argument that no, this should have been done with the zoning ordinance. But I think since that time, that I feel pretty comfortable that the law's changed enough or clarified enough that if you want it out of the zoning ordinance, that could be done. Certainly. So that's kind of the history of it. And as far as the demolition delay, I don't know what you're talking about doing, but as long as it complies with the state law, you're in good shape.
I think we have formed a committee to look at demolition delay, and we've looked at several different demolition delay ordinances across the country to try to pinpoint the issues that we think are most pertinent to the county, and including looking at the Bloomington City provision, which is in planning. The way I understand the Bloomington one is the ordinance originated in the planning ordinance, but the Historic Preservation Commission was appointed to be the hearing officer basically for the first stage of demolition delay. So what we found, and Don stepped in here, but Don and I and Danielle Bashant Bell are this subcommittee. But what we found was that procedurally they're fairly similar, but they put different values on what I would call the subjective thinking around demolition delay. So they don't all. They mostly use a survey of some kind, but sometimes they originate their own survey and sometimes they adopt other people's surveys. And then they have different classifications of what is mandatory for demolition delay. And some of them talk about it as actually as eligibility for demolition delay. So some of them don't have partial demolition, some of them do. So there are a lot of things like that that are in there that decisions need to be made about how the county wants to proceed. I don't think our committee or board feels like it's up to us to make the administrative decisions about it. We've been told that there's support for it at the commissioner's office and even in the planning office. And so we've been sort of asked to look into it. I think primarily because at the city, it's the Preservation Commission that has that authority. So like the city, for instance, anything comes into the building department, which is shared by city and county, it gets earmarked at that point, sent to planning, they also earmark it, and if it's in the interim report, shard historic survey across the state, then it is mandatory that it be heard for demolition delay, and that first hearing goes to the Preservation Commission, not the zoning. Again, this relationship has always been somewhat incestuous between preservation ordinances and zoning ordinances, but and so we just looked into a series of different things, and I guess we're curious about how administratively the county wants to see it, installed, I guess, or instigated. We don't feel like we necessarily have an agenda for how that happens, or that we're necessarily the party that ends up making decisions about it. But we're looking into it kind of at the request of commissioners and director of planning, previous director of planning. So we had one preliminary meeting with the executive committee of Plan Commission, and they were kind of like, okay, go ahead and form your own committee. We'll form our own committee, and then we'll get back together as commissions and talk about how we want to proceed. So I'm not sure where legal fits into all that, except to obviously certify that nothing is illegal. But we haven't even had a discussion on this board about how we think that procedure might work best at the county. And I think the feeling of our committee is that we need to have more administrative feedback. We need to be meeting with the director of planning and possibly commissioners as well to just talk about how they envision that happening. Because we get messages like, well, we want to do it, but we don't want to do it like the city. Well, I think the city's got a good model, but if nobody wants this model to look like that model, then somebody has to decide who's going to differentiate it and how. And I know this goes way back, but right now there seems to be support in the county for this kind of an ordinance. And some of us, maybe all of us, support something that will work like that because we think there's a risk. But how, what survey you look to tell you which buildings are eligible, who points the finger to who, and who makes the first decision and then is there a secondary decision at the city? There's not. The Preservation Commission makes the decision about whether demolition, is whether they think something should be demolished or not. But they only have two choices. They can designate. They don't really have one choice. They can designate it to prevent the demolition. The reality has been that they very rarely designate something for final protection like that, but they do negotiate with whoever has come before them. And a lot that negotiation usually mitigates the demolition to some extent or makes it a better project.
Mhm.
And we've actually had feedback like, boy, I'm really glad we had this meeting because my contractor told me I have to take the roof off and you guys told me I just need to paint the windows, so it's
Usually save on money.
yeah. So it's, it works pretty well just as a negotiation as opposed to laying down the law, I suppose you'd say. On the other hand, the thing that doesn't work is that when there's rampant pressure on development and anybody can acquire a property that's on the fringes of or just not historically designated, but nevertheless historic, according to the general surveys, we're seeing houses go left and right. And there's nothing they can do because you can't designate all of them and they're not all meaningful enough to be designated. So that middle ground is where these ordinances, and even the ones that we looked at in other places, they all have this sort of middle ground where the Preservation Commission or whoever the administrative body is just sort of helpless. They can't designate everything.
Yeah,
And nobody wants to, least of all us. We just pull the rug out from under all of it pretty much. So I think for us right now, that's our issue. And we had we gave this to Tammy. This is the process through which it tends to work at the city. And, you know, you can see it's complicated. So.
An enforcement arm of the, like, what if somebody demos,
Legal,
it just goes straight to legal?
and the same as in the preservation ordinance. You know, if the preservation ordinance is violated, it goes to legal, and there's a fining procedure. Number of violations, how much money it is, and all that is all written in the ordinance. So I don't know where that leaves, but did you do any discovery about procedure or interaction between administrative departments?
I did not.
Yeah.
And, you know, the planning's got the new OpenGov system, so how it can integrate into that would be something to talk about. But no, just wanted to get the historical perspective from the legal department standpoint. We you know, it makes sense for us for the historic preservation group to make recommendations to the commissioners on all these issues that relate to historic preservation. And when we get the policy directive, we'll check it out and, like you say, make sure it passes legal muster.
So obviously, a lot of it has to do with whether we opt to stay in the zoning ordinance or not.
Yes, yeah.
And even that decision it's never been made clear to us whose decision that really is. I mean, some of us, I in particular, have always wanted it to be outside of plan, because I just don't think it works very well. I mean, there is that extra meeting in plan commission, but in fact, there are two preliminary committee meetings that usually have to happen before it even gets to plan commission. So it's really 3 more meetings, or a minimum 2. And everybody has to go through that process. And I find that a little bit cumbersome. And also, I don't personally believe that plan commissions are in a position to make those decisions very much, because they don't typically have training and preservation standards and evaluation methods and stuff like that. Of course, commissioners don't either, but they're the kind of ultimate political arm.
Well, you know, whatever you guys recommend, I'm sure that will be considered heavily. And
So the way it is now, we recommend it to plan commission, or
well, it would be to the county commissioners, because if you want it, you know, in the zoning ordinance, you could recommend the planning commission keep it in there. If you want it out, you could recommend that to the county commissioners, and if they decide to keep it out, it's out. So
I see.
planning commission would have a real say in that.
At which point we would have to amend our ordinance to read accordingly.
Yes. Now, the planning commission might say, no, we want to keep it in, and
I'd be surprised.
yeah. But see how that shakes out. But yeah, I would just say, I think things have changed, but when we adopted this version, the planning commission was not interested in historic preservation or stirring that up at all.
Yeah,
So,
and demolition delay would confuse it considerably more. But I think it would be pretty hard to do demolition delay without a planning interface at some point.
Yeah, I think that's,
So when we zone, we put on an overlay, you know, that's our zoning. But in the federal preservation statute, it's actually pretty clear that historic preservation is not zoning.
Yeah.
So, which is the case you're referring to, really. So it would be a different animal if we were under the zoning ordinance than if we were not. But I think planning is probably still going to be involved unless the building department just sends people straight to us.
I could see planning be involved if they want to still do like historic adaptive reuse. And if it is a designated property, they would have that tool that they could ask for at the Board of Zoning Appeals. That's a use thing that we currently have.
yeah, I think improvement location permits cover demolition of buildings anyway, whether they're historic or not.
Yeah. we
So there
always
will
look at
always
it.
be some.
But there's some by right demolition, isn't there? all demolition permits don't go through some administrative decision, do they, other than planning? I mean, other than building department?
But they come to us every time.
Oh, they
And in
do?
fact, like, I make sure they're not in a floodplain, and if they are, they need a
Okay, so
floodplain
you have
permit.
other strictures there.
Mhm. And if it's, yeah, I mean, sinkholes, you just want to protect,
Yeah.
special, some of the land.
So at the city, it would come to somebody like you who would say, oh, this is on the historic survey. They have somebody who has to check every time the demolition permit comes in to see if it's on the survey. If it's on the survey, it gets kicked. Before anything happens at planning, it gets kicked to the preservation commission.
Yeah, if there's a good map, our software is set to flag properties. I'll use floodplain as an example. There's floodplain touching a parcel anywhere, I get tagged as a reviewer. And if you have a good map, you can put a flag, and if that, parcel has that overlay on it, or, HP designation, it'll go to the person that you want it to go to, and they'll review it.
Well, let me clarify something. If it's already historically designated, demolition delay doesn't come into play. Because a C of A, that has, it goes for a C of A. It gets
Correct.
flagged, but it goes for C of A. If it's demolition delay, is that, are those properties that are only surveyed as historic, but aren't designated under the ordinance. That's
Like
the
the Shard
that's the
meld,
muddy
yeah.
part.
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
Can your equipment meld with the Shard database?
We need,
Flag.
we need that, we need a map that gets adopted and integrated into our parcel layer.
Mhm.
And so there is a GIS person under the surveyor's office that may be able to adapt that data and create the map.
Mhm.
We have a person in here that, I don't know if they would be able to or not, they have some GIS skills that might work with that. So, but then the map needs to be adopted. And from what I understand, when you adopt something with that much kind of oversight with it, then it has to be, you notify those property owners, you notify the neighbors 2 properties out. Because we look at it as kind of amending the zoning map in a sense. And so that is a good expense that we
And so
have to
that's like
figure out.
when the city did it and things went out to thousands upon thousands of people, and half the city of Wilmington freaked out.
I'd imagine
Some of
so.
that, yeah.
And we tried to get rid of the business industrial overlay that we just find very cumbersome. And to just try to do
Yeah.
that was gonna be like $10,000 of postage. And
Yeah,
so we have not done it yet, and we're
Yeah.
waiting to adopt the zoning map as a whole, when we have to pay a massive postage thing
Yeah.
as a whole. And that's what we're hoping, that there will be a map ready to go and calibrated, so that when we adopt the new draft, the new zoning map
Mhm.
with different zoning names, we will get rid of the BIO overlay, and we will hopefully adopt an HP overlay, all encompassing, that not too many people argue about.
So would there be a way for that, for like our map to fold into something larger that you're doing that then could get sent out?
Right, the
With-
Monroe
so it's all
CDO
one-
process is
okay.
happening, and so the Monroe CDO is,
Like they'll have to
it
do
might be
notification
2
anyway.
years
Yeah.
before we are ready, but the 2 years is where you all can be doing your background search for how you wanna put it,
How does construct
find
the
your
map?
staff person, find your funding for your staff person, and, how to integrate that into the county.
Mhm.
So,
I don't think,
Dave, was I on point there, do you think?
I mean, other than creating the map, I don't think there's much issue, at least with what the committee's talked about so far, in that the Shard and the interim reports have been the standard historic survey as required by law
Mhm.
all along, and so there isn't any reason to resurvey. The biggest problem is how good or bad the survey happens to be at any moment. And it's not as good in rural areas of county as it is in urban areas. It's just not as thorough.
Right,
And so one of the problems we've come up with is that the best map we have isn't great.
well, and we've also seen that it doesn't always include just like farms.
Right,
and
lots of
walls.
agricultural
And so
buildings.
that's why when you go to adopt the map, maybe make it all encompassing, not just Shard, but the other special things you want to add to it.
But that survey right there is, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars in several years.
And so you know, think of that 2-year timeline, you can start trying to find your funding or try to
Find a grant.
find a grant, yeah.
I mean, is there anything as simple as like the alcohol carding laws and stuff like that, where it's basically like, if you suspect that the structure is older than 30 years old, like, you know, that sort of thing where, you know, people have a feeling, you know, that the stone wall is not from 1995, you know, that sort of thing,
Mhm.
that it flags it, you know.
Well, that's why, like, when we do get like our special petitions that come before us, like the Hinkle rezone, where that wasn't showing up on any survey, but the property report card showed those buildings of a certain age, which is
Right.
what, and then having been on site was what
Right.
made me have you guys take a look at it.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of times, I mean, we know the whole 1899 thing that happens in our county, but usually when they say 1930, it's not like, oops, we meant 1960. It's usually like, well, they meant 1925, but yeah, 1930 is close enough, you know, sort of
Right.
thing that at this stage, we're
And there might be a way to.
not to make anyone feel old. What is it? 50 years ago is 72?
1972.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a lot of things in the county. Yeah, yeah. I'm almost there, 40. But yeah, I feel like if there's, I don't know if there's like a catch-all rule like that we could use to flag, because I agree that with the interim report, it's almost like you'd almost need the 2 interim reports deep to say, well, if it was on either of these interim reports, you know, that might catch a lot of things, but you know, we all know there's the driveway that's half a mile long that nobody's ever been down.
But that's the thing, you guys only have power, and I just read that today, where you can see it from a public right of way,
Okay,
I think, right? I mean, I think it does only like it's where
Yeah.
you have visibility to see it. So if there is something tucked way back,
Yeah.
Well, it's,
Don't
you
be- I
can
think it's
designate, you
outside
can
of-
designate property that you can't see from the road.
I have to read that. I don't know.
The public view issue has to do with what's the primary facade. And so.
so if we designated a stone wall that was, you know, 5,000 feet off the road, it's probably part of a larger,
Yeah.
you know, setting.
I mean, I think there are a couple of properties out off the Maple Grove Road that you can't see.
I think that's for if you're gonna get a certificate of appropriateness or for
Yeah,
demolition.
That's
then-
where the public
Yeah,
view takes it.
but one point, Tammy, I think if
Yeah.
you take this out of the zoning ordinance, then you only have to notify the property owner
Yeah,
to
Okay,
create the district, so that's.
That's the way it is.
that sounds great. I'm making a note of that.
When you say create the district, you mean like just make the map that shows the things,
Right.
because we're not necessarily designating those properties.
no,
We're just identifying, we're matching them with another resource.
we're just trying to figure out how to determine whether something is mandated to come before some kind of hearing for demolition delay or not. Like what buildings are eligible for it, and which ones aren't. And the 50-year-old attachment has worked, I mean, that starts in the National Register.
Yeah,
And so if it's 50 years old, that's the first step of eligibility for
Right.
the National Register of Historic Places. That doesn't mean it's eligible otherwise. It just means it can be considered.
well, and
So that's been used for all kinds of things in survey about.
aren't we
as
technically
a cutoff
also
point.
with archaeological sites, aren't we kind of technically over that as well? Like, if there's something that's a 10,000-year-old
Yeah.
Native American
Yeah.
rock carving or something that.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I think about things like with I-69 Virginia Iron Works. I'm not sure if Virginia Iron Works, I don't know if any of that was visible from the road, because I'd never heard of Virginia Iron Works until the I-69 came along, so. But that would have been something that would have, you know,
Yeah.
if somebody wanted to build a housing addition there, we would have hoped to have seen.
Yeah.
Come before us.
But there's nothing in federal or state ordinance that says property has to be visible in
That's
order
just
to
more
be-
this-
in order to be
It
designated. as a
appropriate
historic.
us.
So I don't know, I guess for me, it's a lot, it's somewhat simpler if we're outside the zoning ordinance. But there's still this issue of what properties are eligible for demolition delay, how it gets tagged, and you know, the extent to which that decision, if let's just say this body made that decision, is that binding at that point? In other words, the decision's done. There isn't,
Right,
it doesn't go to plan commission, it doesn't go to
right.
secondary or third stage of approval. I mean, that's normally the way it's done. Whoever makes the decision, that's the
The
decision.
final decision,
You don't send every demolition delay proposal
system, yeah.
to the county commissioners.
yeah.
You know.
Is there a version of, because I know we tend to want to go with the interim report. Is there a version that's like interim report plus? Like, are there things we can add
The
to
city
our?
uses all the interim reports
Uh-huh,
and chart,
okay.
because there's overlap,
Uh-huh,
but they're also chart, the chart's the most recent, and it picked up more stuff that was
Uh-huh.
never in the interim reports because
Yeah.
it wasn't old enough.
yeah.
So.
Well, because we went forever, we went,
stuff-
what, 87 or 89? What was it, 89?
Yeah,
We went from 89 to what, 2000?
yeah, that's the only
Yeah,
county
whatever.
survey.
Yeah, so I feel like if we did interim and shard, and then if, even just in the system, if it says it's older than 1972, then it's older than 1972, there's not. That's the county record of it anyway, so,
Generally, there's nothing in the survey that's not 50 years old.
right, yeah,
Not 100%, but
yeah, but we
outstanding
have,
mid-century stuff.
yeah, I mean, yeah, like, the ranch house I grew up in would not be in the report, because the report is now too old, but now it's a 1971, so.
But this other issue that Tammy brought up,
Non-contributing.
which has buildings that weren't being looked at
Yeah.
because they weren't just being considered in general.
Mhm, like
Industrial buildings and agricultural work buildings
Mhm,
were not being considered. So quarry mills, quarry sites,
mhm,
there were any other things like the Johnson Creamery weren't on the interim report,
mhm.
you know.
It was industrial and people
Yeah,
didn't
and
care
they
about
just
it.
weren't, and as she said, farms in particular, unless they're
You know,
really front and center and very, very significant. So we're gonna have a big gap in our survey.
and is there like an open season to add to the survey? Like, I mean, I guess, do we review and re-adopt what's included every so often?
I think that the federal mandate is that every state be completely resurveyed every 10 years. That's a joke. I mean, Indiana just got completely surveyed
After,
starting
like,
in
25 years.
1966.
Oh, yeah,
Just last year, I think, all counties were surveyed.
yeah.
And obviously Monroe County has been due for several decades.
Survey's not a census. It's a lot more.
No, you got to go stories.
Yeah.
No, I've done it. It's a huge amount of work. Yeah. And sometimes you're treated with rather unfriendly.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so there would be some catch up. There'd be some gap to fill, but that doesn't mean you couldn't start with what you got and
Right.
then, as Tammy suggested, find the funding or acquire the funding through the county.
Yeah, to do a whole barn survey, wall survey, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And usually you get a third party to do that.
Yeah,
So that's a complication, but I don't think that's something that should stop the process. In other words, we do have a really good survey as
yeah.
basically, which is a place to start.
So essentially, though, going back to the whether we're under zoning or not, which has been a long time discussion. I feel like we've been having it for 5 years at least. We could move out, or we could recommend that we move out from under zoning. And obviously there's parts of it that still interact with planning and zoning, because the nature of the beast is that,
Yeah.
the way that we do historic preservation overlays is through zoning, even though it's not a zone.
Yeah,
And the way for planning or demolition delays, we'd have to interact.
yeah, and I think, it's just the fact that the preservation ordinances have never been set up to require demolition permits for anything other than already designated buildings. So demolition delay is a process that people use in order to anticipate historic buildings not being destroyed before they're designated. So it's always this middle ground stuff, which is, people know is old, but they don't know if it's meaningful enough to save and protect. And so that's kind of the decision is, okay, go ahead and tear it down because we don't think it's so significant that it has to be protected. Or no, we're gonna try to designate it because it needs to be protected. I mean, that's the ultimate decision every time. It's very frustrating to serve in that capacity because you look at a lot of good stuff go down. I mean,
Just last week.
Yeah.
On the Beeline Trail.
Yeah.
That barn. I watched it go down.
did you?
Mhm. It's very frustrating.
So for me, that's the sort of complicated part of it. But it seems like since the demolition process already goes through the building department and then gets past planning, there's always going to be this relationship, even if we're outside of planning, that it gets instigated at the building department. Either the building department looks at the survey itself and refers it directly to the preservation board, or
Should get on, I mean, it should, if the map is good,
They'll
you'll
flag us
just, your
anyway.
person will get flagged. Just as like,
Like you
if
get
we
flagged for
flag the
floodplain
fire
stuff, yeah.
chief, if I have something weird and, well, what I want to happen is if there's something weird and near the airport going on, that I want to be able to flag. Yeah, that little overlay around the airport, should flag our airport director.
well, I mean, the map, they say at the city, the maps are pretty good, but they still miss them. I mean, it happens. You know. So I don't know what the
Our
best.
zoning map's not perfect.
I don't know where the best way to go through that is. Maybe you can't, maybe you don't really need planning, a referral through planning to do that.
No, I don't think you do.
Okay.
I think it would, I mean, there's an application that has to be submitted. And that application gets first, the intake is in the building department to make sure it's got a map and fee payment that's done. And then it just gets distributed to wherever that needs to go, whether that's the fire chief or planning or floodplain administrator. And then when everybody checks their stuff off, it all swoops back to the building department and they pay their fee there and pick up
Right.
whatever
Right.
things they, certificates they need that are associated with it.
I don't know if that's, the right- I don't know if it's somebody at city planning who checks that box or whether it's somebody. in the building department.
They're not automated right now.
Right.
It's
The building
wish
department
they
isn't.
were. The building department has to hand, like, kind of send everything to the building department, because they didn't want to be on our system. And they have a system, but it's never been set up. So, and it's gonna be different from counties. So county and city are gonna have different systems. We got ours going, and it's been running a year.
Respectfully, two different animals.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
But the building department unfortunately straddles both of
Yeah.
those realms,
Yeah.
like, and it adds work.
Yeah, I can imagine. So essentially, we have this window of, you said about 2 years.
That's if it
That's
sticks
an
in
easy window,
planning. If it
yeah.
stays in planning, I feel like there's that map issue that it will need to be adopted. Dave, I wrote it down, Dave was saying that if you're under commissioners only, in a separate little umbrella and have a staff person who can work and process your permits and other designation or mapping additions and whatever needs to happen.
Then that'd be a separate time frame.
Yeah, I think it would just be an adoption of map. Or, no, he said, only notify the actual property owners themselves that you're identifying as having.
Your house is old. Your barn
My
is
house
old.
and barn are very old, but they are not pretty. Pretty of it.
Okay.
Question. I don't know if I addressed Polly or Dave. I have a question. If this board would decide to go outside of zoning and planning. And if this demolition delay would occur. And then if you had a homeowner or a business that is pushing back, you know, because they don't agree as this thing would go forward, where would that leave this board? Would we have support from the county? Would we be left on our own to fend for ourselves?
Yeah, the way I read the enforcement provisions, it's the county would have to enforce. I couldn't find anything there that says the historic preservation board can enforce the ordinance.
We don't get badges.
Like the state historic group could come in and do it. Any interested party, you know, landowner, but it didn't say the historic preservation board or commission could do it. Which I thought was pretty strange, but that's what it says.
Well, when that happens at the city legal is the enforcement arm. Because it's a commission that's enabled by an ordinance at the city, and they're the enforcement arm for all the commissions. So I assume it's the same in the county.
Yeah.
So pushing back, objecting is one thing. Not following the rules is something different.
That's why I'm
If
asking.
you break the law, it's gonna be legal.
No, that's why I'm asking. I'd like clarification.
I mean, it's an ordinance violation.
What usually happens, it's curious, if you if there was a demolition delay hold put on something, you just tore it down. That would be written out in the legislation or the.
Yeah, I mean, in a situation like that, about all you can do is find a person. I mean, it's already gone.
Like a movement, but.
Yeah.
And,
You can catch them early enough.
There was a case in Bloomington
That happened
on
not too
7th
long
Street
ago, yeah.
recently,
Mhm.
and
Gone
they
overnight.
fined them heavily. There's a provision in the ordinance for finding how many, for every violation, for every day of every violation, the fine is the same, $2,500 per day.
So it can add up.
So you can,
did.
depending on how long you want to sustain
Yeah.
the violation, it can be huge. And they prohibited them from taking a permit on that property for 10 years or something like that. So they basically rendered that property broke. I mean, you know, at that point, and his whole point of tearing the thing down was he had some big plan that he was going to develop there.
As long as it's enforced like that, then people, you know, builders can be real.
No,
The
doing well.
community was outraged when that
I think the
happened.
enforcement's been pretty
Around-
consistent, in my experience, and have been good for a long
I
time.
like that not issuing permits for
Mhm.
10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just became ineligible as a developer in the city.
Yeah, you might as
It's
well
on that
move.
particular parcel, it's not
Right.
across the board.
Right, right, right,
Never
right.
So,
Nevertheless,
yeah,
It's a.
if you think you're gonna get away with
it's
something
handcuff.
quick, then yeah, that's a good lesson.
Yeah, it's a handcuff.
Yeah.
So there's some teeth to it.
It's mostly, and most preservation ordinances have had pretty high fines per violation, and the violations are per day. So it's, you know, it's not something you want to get into.
Good.
But we wouldn't be left fending for ourselves. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
that's important.
Ideally, your staff person would be like what happens with us. They sort of set up your case, they send out notification letters, they try to get people to do the compliant thing or be aware. And then when it gets to a level, we
Yeah.
turn it over to them.
enforcement. Yeah.
It would just be, I don't know if this clarifies or not, but it's just a standalone, the preservation ordinance under the county is a standalone ordinance. There's a commission that administers that ordinance, and that for designations, we still send it to the commissioners
Right.
for final approval. All we can do is suggest it or nominate it, okay? But it's just like any other commission in the county, it has the same. It's just not under the jurisdiction of the planning department or within the planning department. Otherwise, nothing's different. Except it's a little bit easier administratively, but we haven't historically designated very many properties in the county, so it hasn't been cumbersome to go through plan commission particularly. But if you had a lot of that business, it would add significantly to their task. I think that for me, this is repeating myself. For me, it's always been, how does the job get done the most efficiently and most, with the most expertise applied? So if you have a preservation commission and there are stipulations for what kind of expertise it takes to belong to it and participate on it, and that's the body of people that you really want to have doing the oversight of a certain issue, like say designated historic property. You don't want to have that expertise at the lowest level and then pass it up to less and less expert people, because the decisions aren't consistently good. So you always have the ultimate elected official, whether it's the mayor or the commissioners or city council or whatever, to go through. But the more bodies you pass it through, the more diffuse and difficult the process becomes. And I think it's a lot more frustrating for the people who are looking to get it done for, the property owners.
Yeah.
Because most designations happen because the property owner comes to you and requests it. They're not done by forcing it down their throat.
Right, that's what I would say.
So if you go to 6 meetings instead of 2, makes a little difference. Plus, you want to be able to do it quickly.
Yeah, get that process initiated and done.
Especially if you need to protect something from some dire consequence, which is often the case. A highway is coming through. Or
Yeah.
bad owner or whatever. So I guess we just have to take our committee back to the committee room and make some decisions about that.
We want to present to them, we wouldn't really write this legislation. We would just say, we need to have this, 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 and this. Right? Somebody else would write legislation.
No, I think you guys write it and we'll read it and make sure that it meets legal snuff. I mean,
Okay.
If you have examples that you like, you
Mhm.
want to put something together, that's fine.
Just make sure it's all the same font and size.
and yeah, if it's not gonna be under planning, I mean, it'd be hard for the planners to write it. If it stayed under planning and you wanna edit anything, I think we would definitely put our eyes on it and have Dave put his eyes on it.
Sure.
And make our
Sure.
recommendations, but
I have to say, the only thing that
we're not
concerned
the
me,
expert. I mean, you guys are the experts, so if, like,
Yeah.
you would maybe modeling after what you've been researching, what you want, like it seems more applicable. Have you guys really put out the bulk of the document, and then it is a starting point for them refining. And,
Just trying to get out of some more.
yeah.
Well, and
Outlines
the
are-
ordinances, all the ordinances have to follow the state enabling legislation, which is in Indiana is a fairly crude document, to be frank. It's not a great ordinance, but it's got all the basics that are required by the federal. So all they've done is they have to follow the federal ordinance. So they've done it somewhat haphazardly, but they've got most of the key ingredients in it. But the best ordinances tend to finesse those issues. Like, for instance, they have very good introductory statements that outline very specifically what the purpose of the ordinance is. So for instance, if you want to include things like economic development, if you're worried that you're going to be blamed for being anti-economic development, then in the introductory statement, that's one of the things that this ordinance is intended to assist with, is economic development. It may not be the economic development of Bob over here, but it might be the economic development of historic properties
Sure.
or downtowns, or so like all ordinances, they're, the people with the silver pen write the best ordinances, because, I mean, no, but we don't look to Thomas Jefferson because he was a wonderful guy. We look to him because he knew how to write the good stuff. So
Okay.
it's kind of like that. So I'd like the city ordinance is very good in that regard. It's taken up the slack where a lot of ordinances don't. So it has a really good demo, it has a really good hardship clause. So if somebody comes and you want to designate their property and they say, I can't afford it, I can't get an economic return here. There's all kinds of laws. So it's very ample for covering all the things that you would have to do to prove that you can't get an economic return, including require that you sell the property. So a lot of people would say, you can't make people sell their property, but there are ordinances that do that.
Yeah.
So that's when the administrative part of it comes in hand, like, what are the elected officials comfortable with enforcing
Right.
or demanding on the public? And so, these are regulatory ordinances, so you have to be specific and careful. I think.
Yeah.
In your committee, have you seen much that goes beyond what the city of Bloomington says that you feel like is more fitting for the county than what the city of
I don't
Bloomington
know if
has?
I've seen enough of them. I don't think I'm familiar with enough of the new ones I've read to have a take on whether the one at the city is ample or not.
Okay.
I generally think from using it, it is.
Mhm.
But like I said, there's this muddy area where stuff gets lost, and it's really a shame that it got lost because the ordinance that can't find a way to,
Mhm.
you just can't save everything.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of heartbreak. But some of the ordinances they have all these stages that a property has to meet a standard for in order, before you can regulate it.
Okay.
So for instance, like in the National Register, things are either outstanding or notable or
Mhm.
contributing, right?
Yeah.
They'll have a multi-layered requirement like that.
Yeah.
So they're all subjective decisions.
Yeah.
Right.
That's.
And they're frequently made by people who don't have that expertise. So, more often than not, that's the case. So I find that could be really cumbersome.
I was a little bit concerned on the city chart, on the flow chart with contributing. It looked like contributing was considered this like lower class.
Yeah. it
than-
didn't-
And it's like, well, it's still contributing though. So, yeah, the contributing with partial demolition or substantial removal,
Yeah.
says demolition delay not applicable. It's like, well, but it's still contributing property. It's above the bar of, if we're non-contributing, then it would be non-contributing. And it would be, over there.
And that's where a lot of the negotiation happens. is
Right.
Partial demolition.
Right.
And substantially.
Because if the partial demolition is the front of the house, then I would say that's maybe,
I mean, more often than not, it's a porch post. or
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
or a
yeah,
dormer.
yeah.
But that's always a bigger problem in preservation ordinances, the whole notion of contributing, because the reason for it was that it contributes to the whole. And so what it really is very important regarding the whole, like a neighborhood. So to be contributing really matters. To be outstanding matters less. Because, but if it's single properties, outstanding
Mhm.
means is more eligible. So people tend to say, naysayers tend to say, well, it's only contributing. Well, that's really
Yeah.
not what the intention is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's complicated. I don't know. I just hash this out all week, so.
Are there any other questions for Dave?
Probably not right now.
Yeah, all righty, well, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I hope you have a good dinner. Go back to the agenda, which figure out.
I know, I'm wondering if in view you can,
Yeah, make it bigger.
oh, there we go. Yay.
Okay. So we called the order, yes.
Let's check.
They're back in charge, Colin.
Yep.
Muted also.
I can't hear you guys real well. Can you talk a little? I was earlier, but I
Here,
didn't hear
can
that
you hear
last
me?
part at all.
Yeah, we almost need to speak at the owl.
Polly, can you hear me? I'm the closest
Yes,
to the.
I can hear you,
microphone. Okay.
Devin.
So probably it was hard for you to hear Dave, I imagine.
I could hear him all right.
We probably just need to talk, but yeah, you're right, like just talk more directly to the owl in the middle of the table.
Okay, so it looks like we're ready to move back into our order, regular order for the agenda, which means we need to approve the meeting minutes. Thank you, Tammy, for sending those out. Did anybody have any comments on the meeting minutes?
Well, I can't vote on them. I would ask that my name be corrected.
Oh, we
My
can do
last
that.
name is actually Snyder Salmon, 2 words.
Yeah.
And it's in 2 places. And I appreciate that being there.
Thank you. Thanks for pointing that out.
And there was also the issue of Susan Hinkle was a member of the public who was at the meeting, and you don't have her at the top as an
Perfect.
attendee.
Thank you.
That's a good point.
Did you hear me all right, Polly?
Yes, just fine. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to use my teaching voice.
I just noticed something up there.
Mhm.
You've got Joan Hall listed. That's probably because I had my wife's computer.
Oh, probably. Okay.
That's right, her name was on her face.
Yeah.
So he'll have to move into attendees out of the public.
Just take her name off.
Yeah.
I'm listed in attendees.
It's like an IEP meetings when you think it's only the parent there and then you hear the student's voice in the background, it's like, add their name.
Well, I have some X's here. What is?
It's something, yeah, that XX. I don't remember who we were referring to there. Does anyone else remember?
Was that Steve Wyatt,
Thank you.
the historic preservation is formerly known as Steve Wyatt. So what the XXX means.
Currently known as triple X.
Yeah, exactly. We'll let him know, that's his.
Maybe I should put question marks in the future. Okay. Okay, then. The vote. Anyone wanna? Do a motion?
And I was absent last time, so do I just abstain from voting?
I move we approve the minutes for February 21st, 2022.
I could second that.
Hall, correct?
Mhm.
All right, so. Voting sheet, all right, let's go with the vote. Debbie Reed
Yes.
and Duncan Campbell,
Yes.
Don Maxwell,
Yes.
Don Hall,
Yes.
Doug Wilson,
Yes.
Holly Root Sturgeon,
Yes.
Devin Blankenship,
Yes.
and Susan Snyder Salmon.
Am I eligible to vote? Because I
You were
wasn't
gonna, you can
appointed.
abstain. That's
Yeah, I
fine.
think I have to abstain because I wasn't
Mhm.
on the board then.
Danielle Deschamps is absent. So, again, so that passes with a 6-0 with 1 abstention.
I get 7. There's the 5
Is
of
it
us
7?
here and Doug and
Uh-huh.
Polly
I think you're right.
and Susan abstaining.
Did you call Doug?
Yes. His voice came from the
Keyboard
owl.
is killing me. Okay.
Magic.
Let's see. I would like to make, I meant to make an introduction before Dave Schilling started. Daniel Brown. Daniel, I don't know if you have the ability to share screen, to share turn on your camera or not. But Daniel Brown is our new planner here at Monroe County. He started just a couple of weeks ago. Hey, there you
There he is.
are. And let's stop share screen. And I was gonna let Daniel introduce himself because he does have some background in historic preservation.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Dana Brown. I'm the new planner here in the government. I attended Auburn University for my undergraduate, and at grad school at UGA, I obtained a certificate in historic preservation. And my thesis was about the adaptive reuse of mill buildings located along rivers. And I'm happy to be here. It's a pleasure to meet you all.
Nice to meet you, Dave.
Welcome.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, just wanted to introduce
His
him.
name starts with a D. So.
I know.
I can write
Right.
I think we went for a long time without noticing that until, until somebody else did. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It just gets.
And then,
Demolition D.
Yeah. That's like our roller derby name. Roller derby name, demolition delay.
let's see, and then I had a few administrative items that I wanted to discuss briefly. And there's a few that I'm adding to the list. The
Go for it.
2022 annual report. I don't know if I shared screen like properly there. Hold on just a moment. I want to make sure everyone else can see what I'm seeing. Let's
It's
do
a
the
separate
whole
window. It's
screen.
the, there we go.
Okay, so 2020's annual report for CLG is, it was literally just delivered to me on Friday afternoon. And we have a deadline of April 29th, which means next month, I'm going to definitely be putting this on the agenda. I'm gonna try to fill out as much as possible and would appreciate everyone to help contribute, filling in the gaps where we need it. And I have done one of these before, so I have a template, I'm familiar with it, so hopefully it just goes pretty smoothly, but we will have to collect, if I recall, there's signatures we need to get from the commissioners, I think. So, or at least one, I think I need Julie's to sign it. So we just want to have it kind of ahead. And I think, you know, the email said that they had some wiggle room if we needed it. I prefer to just knock this out if we can. So you know, that's on deck. And then the electronic meeting, you know, I attached this in the previous email, so just make sure that you're familiar with the in-person and virtual rules, and that we don't get dinged for not having an in-person quorum. We always need to have 5 members here in the seats, and you know, just paying attention to, let's see, maybe I will try to find the more specific requirements, because you have to be, you as members need to attend 50% of the meetings, and I feel like it can't be more than, it's almost like every other meeting. You could be virtual.
I think that's really important because I had that conversation with one of the county commissioners who was questioning whether or not this would work for me because of my need to be gone. We had that very conversation.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to point out that the Exhibit A was not attached to my copy.
Okay.
So.
I don't think I don't think
maybe
it
that
was
should
for
get
anyone,
attached,
so I'll make
Okay.
sure to resend that.
because it's about a sequence of how many you can be gone.
Right.
and, Yeah,
Well,
and how votes and such.
yeah, if I recall part of it too, and this, it would be nice for us to kind of have a little diagram to help us out. If I recall part of it too was, you know, the number of times that you can vote.
Exactly.
So then there might be certain meetings that we go, oh, this is a non-voting meeting. Like, so there's not a conflict at all, you know, sort of thing that, or, you know, people can attend as with. I remember one of the points that came up when we first discussed this coming through was that if somebody needed to attend as a member of the public, they still were able to express an opinion and share an idea, but not necessarily be a voting member of that particular meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
My question, I guess, is who's checking? Who's responsible for making sure the quorum is set?
I am. I keep
So
a
that
very
falls on your shoulders.
detailed, yeah, and that's why it was really great that this month every one of you responded and you each told me if you were gonna be in person or virtual. I send that calendar invite, and I know that's kind of awkward. I mean, you guys can always put it on, but I think it's gonna be, you can still accept calendar invite.
No.
Um,
You
but
still
I'll
need to
still
express
need to
you if
hear
it's in
from you in
person.
some way if you're in
Yeah.
person or virtual.
I did not get a calendar.
I know,
invite,
I'm
just for
gonna,
your benefit.
yeah, I'll
Yeah.
include you next month on that one.
Okay.
I didn't want to confuse the rest of the group this month.
Update
We're easily
everybody.
confused.
Yeah.
And,
So basically, you'll mostly need our verbal thing saying, I will be there in
Yeah.
person or I will be there virtually.
Can you set a deadline for letting us know if there's an underform, like the previous Friday, so that if there's a way to,
you guys are like one of the most responsible groups for responding.
okay.
And we
And I
respond 5 minutes
usually, and a
before the
lot of
meeting.
times I'll send out I send out that re-notification on the morning of, I try to do it Monday morning, the day of the meeting, and I'll let you know if I'm not getting quorum at that time.
So basically, as a courtesy to each other, the earlier some of us respond saying, I will be there in person, the easier it makes.
And if you want to give me, if someone really was like, I can attend in person, but it'd be great if I could be from home if it's something available. I think I
Yeah.
can give
Like
you
you're
a
here in
heads
the office,
up.
somebody could call or email you
But-
about that.
To be fair, I'm also managing the PRC committee, the plat committee, this committee, the plan commission, the PC admin, and I have to confirm PC. I have to confirm in-person quorum for all of those. This is the first meeting we've had hybrid because I have not been able to get a quorum. So thanks for everyone for coming. It's my first.
Everybody knows I moved back to take off my mask. So
But
With,
yeah,
with great respect to everyone here and everyone visiting Zoom, the earlier, the sooner that you could respond would really help not only staff, as Tammy just said, because she's overloaded with responsibilities, but all of us have sets of problems and all of us have duties and responsibilities. And it really helps to know, instead of Monday afternoon of our Monday night
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
and
So
for our guests, even that are coming
exactly.
too, for any
So-
petitions.
if you can, please respond as soon as you can, please. And thank you.
So what's the expectation for how long meetings will be hybrid? Or will they always be?
I think that if you want to revisit the policy, you could, and you could vote to turn it down. The thing that I find really nice about the policy is, I think it's gonna be here forever. I think it,
That answers my question.
It's like we can't unring that bell.
I
Now
think
it's-
so. Now that we
Yeah.
know Zoom exists and it is very accommodating for
There's another
people
variation
who sometimes
coming.
have an issue.
I'll be putting our mask on again anyway.
And we're always, I think, gonna have a virtual component for the public.
Yeah.
We're always gonna have the owl and the.
Well, and I think, and when we discussed it before you came back on, and it was part of this discussion, was that people like you who travel, people like me who travel, it's like, yeah, I ran the meeting from Ireland one time.
Exactly.
Like, it's not impossible. It's, we're able to do this now, and we know we're able to do it, so. So really, this is just if I recall, this is from the state, this is the state saying like, this is the bare minimum, this is, yeah.
Mhm.
So this is not our wording at all in that
Right.
thing, that's
I
the state,
understand that,
yeah.
I felt like when it first came out, it was kind of an interim arrangement with the intention of getting back to in-person
I think we can-
representation, but it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
I mean, for my part, I will always come to the meeting if I possibly can,
Right.
because I don't like Zoom meetings very much. I don't find them very productive, and it's just not, this
Right.
doesn't work as well.
And it is a true quorum for our board that has to be physically in person.
Yeah.
So basically be like the minimum number of our board present, and everybody else in cyberspace, even if they're a member, sort of they're the added bonus, to the numbers, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just have to remember quorum is 5
Yeah.
for us right now. Okay.
And then I was gonna bring up this as the room that we are currently, the plan commission approves a meeting schedule of times and locations. And at the end of this meeting, I was gonna show you another room that's downstairs. It's called 100B. It's a little bit larger, and I don't know if that is something that would make people more comfortable.
But the
but
one down the other hall a little bit,
it's downstairs and like past the
the entryway.
Parks and Rec, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Closer to the front door.
It is
It
closer to the
is.
front door.
We were in there before, yeah. we used to
So-
be in
Yeah,
there
I
all
think
the
we
time.
have.
We've met
Yeah.
there several.
But yeah,
When I
obviously
do
show it to us. We might be thinking the wrong room, but. it
Yeah,
would be
they've
neat to some
got kind
people.
of a standard setup now, and the owl hangs from the ceiling, it's like a bat. Almost. So it's just a different,
Yeah.
we have to change our calendar this,
Certain amount ahead of
this next
time.
month. And so tonight, if you all want to vote to be downstairs rather than here, I mean, I can accommodate either way.
So where they train election officers.
That was gonna be the one, I don't know where they're training the election officers right
What,
now.
but in the past, is that in that room?
I believe so.
That was
yeah.
one of the
Done already,
rooms,
yeah.
and there used to be one upstairs they've done before as
Cause I
well.
know the only other room that we've been in here was there's a corner room downstairs on this hall down below us.
Mhm.
It was close to the other end of the hall. We were in there for a little bit. I don't know if the county has control over that room anymore or not. But then, yeah, I think that 100B was where we were for quite a while. Once we left Nat U Hill room, which the decision was when parking meters came in, we were like, might as well park for free at the showers and stuff.
Well, we can decide the
As
room,
much as I miss them.
we
at
can
Nat
do
U
like a
Hill.
hand
Yeah.
vote when we get down there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I guess, we would miss Polly and Doug. We could revisit that maybe, or,
I'll trust what the others want to do. I'm good with
Yeah.
that.
okay. And then going down my list of, I just wanted to remind people, we had to change the plan commission meeting this month. And I just wanted to kind of educate everyone on, if you go to the Monroe County government page and you click on main, get on the main thing, there is a calendar and something, the calendar, if we go back to February and look at the historic preservation date that happened last month, just wanted to let you know that like the link to the recording is here if you ever need to like visit it live. Also then going back, just to let you know that like still in February, now I want to go to March. So March, we had to move our plan commission meeting because there was a hybrid conflict with the county council. So it's going to be next month, but we do have the agenda and packet, the Zoom
Okay.
link.
That's nice.
And I just wanted to remind folks that on the agenda, this is a terrible idea. Well, this is good because I'm not seeing it here.
It
Here.
doesn't do,
I'm gonna have to
Let's
make
see,
sure
you've
that
got
it got
22,
reclassified. Oh,
20.
I know why it's not here, because it's published tomorrow.
There
okay.
you go.
We
That's
published it a
okay.
week before the meeting. There are two items. The Hinkle rezone will be going. We are adding a very, after feedback from the plan commission, this is what the report is gonna look like. We are completely adding another rezone component to this petition, and that is to add the HP overlay to the 1080 square foot barn. It's basically been legal noticed so that it's gonna now kind of almost be the regular rezone is going for its final hearing, it's already been heard by the planning commission. The HP overlay is gonna be for its first hearing, and they could waive the final hearing, or it might have to go back again in another month. But I'm just reminding you that this is on the agenda for this month, and then also the one where there was the limestone wall. That was a different rezone that was happening.
Are they making the
could
barn a
have
separate parcel
that
on this one, or are they doing the overlay, but just considering
Partial overlay. It'll
Partial
literally be
overlay.
a square over top of the barn.
Nary, have I heard of such a thing?
So that's,
And
That's
it
the map.
it went past legal.
that's the map, it's just the foundation line of the barn.
Because we based it upon the recommendation from the board. And the board specifically was like, we want to see the overlay over 1080 square feet. I'm like, we'll see if we can do it. And if Jillian said, okay, and the plan commission was like, let's see if we can fit it into the agenda. And so here we have it. And you know, this will be the first one that will get voted on. We think that this would become a moot point if then this is added in. So they'll probably get rid of the second condition of approval. I think. So we'll see. They may reword this and they may, there was a little bit of discussion as if we're jumping out of our legal bounds by initiating this overlay at this point, but I think because it's getting offered a primary and a secondary hearing, or preliminary and a final hearing, and then we will also, we've been legal noticing it correctly, I think it'll be fine. And then that was all I had regarding administrative items. So thanks, Polly, for letting me talk about some administrative items.
Absolutely. Thank you for going over all of those. Again, I'll be fine with whatever the group, the in-person group wants to decide for the meeting location. Just let us know for the next meeting. Okay, we don't have any old business, so, and we already covered the first part of the new business, so we want to go back to the work plan. Since we have enough time this evening, my goal is that we approve the work plan draft, which is something we haven't been able to do up to this point. We're always kind of running late. So if we want each committee to go through and say if they've had any updates since the last meeting, and then at the end, we can vote to approve the work plan. I think that sounds like a good way to move forward. So any updates from Limestone Heritage?
Oh, I do.
We're gonna put you on the
Wendy Wilson from Tech Services came in this morning and she was like, I've made some progress. Just want you to convey this to the board. She has figured out a way to link images into the links. She is very much struggling right now with the YouTube. She spent a considerable amount of time trying to how to link the videos through the appropriate way of using the YouTube channels. And she really just needs the director to work with her on that. And he is very much spoken for with his time often. So it's still gonna be a while before we can get the video links up, but I'm going to, hopefully you can see my screen here. If we go to the community tab of the Monroe County Government website, we have Limestone Heritage. Pops up. So she's been making a lot of the little text amendments, but then she has added in these links that, I mean, I think she randomly just picked the pictures if you guys want to edit something, but for like the Limestone curriculum, when you click it, it worked for me earlier. She showed me, it's thinking, give it a second to over.
Yeah.
She's got the all the different grade levels, just a link that you can click with an image, which we didn't think this was possible. So it's great. She's done some troubleshooting and figured out how to make this a more,
That's user friendly.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah. And I know she still has got the YouTube videos on her mind, so we'll just, it'll be at the timely discretion of the director of tech services, and
Good.
juggles a lot. So just that's the update I have on that part.
That's great. I remember last meeting Danielle, who's not here, but she had wondered if she wanted to add things to the HP website. Would this be the same person to contact?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll let her know. Okay, is there any change to the goals for that committee that we want to make, or do we want to say that's good and then move on to the next one? I guess Debbie, you're the voice of this one.
Danielle, Wendy and I met some time ago and in person some time ago. And Wendy has has several lists of things that we were hoping to add to the site. So it's really wonderful to see that Wendy's making progress. This is great news. Because there was quite a bit of stuff on the list.
Yes, I agree. It seems like everything with the website was such a struggle for a while, so it's nice to see it's moving forward and all the support we're getting from the county for updates. Okay, we'll move on to dry stone walls, the subcommittee there. Is there anything you'd like to add, change to your list, or any updates?
Well, I don't think we can take any of these off
No.
because we haven't done any of them. So it seems legit to continue with it the way it is for me, from my standpoint. We got a little bit waylaid by, well, I don't know, waylaid, but because of what we were doing with the Rumpke site and all that discussion and looking at those walls. I suppose that might have fallen under the purview of this committee in some way, but we accomplished something there that wasn't on the list, so it's not good for naught.
Okay. I agree. I think you guys have a great list, plenty to work on, and no need to apologize for not getting to it. We understand. Subcommittee 3, community and site signage. Anything you want to change on your list?
I have reached out to our Smithville contact. So I have that. I still need to reach out to the county commissioners just to see where the level of financial support is. I might amend on letter A if people agree. It says as long as funding is provided. I feel like that's a little bit vague because initially this project was community funded with county support. So I might say as long as support is provided, which I know is still vague, but since the support initially was from, the financial support was initially from community members and then later became the county commissioners. I don't want us later saying like, oh, well, the county commissioners have said that they're not going to throw money at it, since that's not how it was originally designed. If that makes sense. And then I really would like to distill down from the historic covered bridge book from Jeremy Boshears what might be good for signage for that. I don't know, has anybody else read the book? Does anybody else have the covered bridge book? So if there's special tidbits in there that you're like, that needs to go on the sign, then let me know.
It's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So just that one wording change, and otherwise it's good. And thanks for the update. Okay. Well, Devin, did you have any updates for the education?
I don't have any.
I do.
Oh, you do? Wow. Excellent. I would love to hear those.
I know. So just on Friday, which is why I hadn't emailed you, because I figured it's close enough to the meeting that we could just discuss it as a group. On Friday, I got approval from IU to revisit the Limestone Month Festival. That's
good.
something that I had brought to the board back in 2019. And that we were going to try to have a Limestone Month Festival in the summer of 2020. That obviously got canceled due to COVID. And I'm going to be re-hosting that, or I guess trying again here for this summer. So the date for that's been approved by IU is June 4th. It's the first Saturday of June 4th from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock. It's going to be located next on the outdoor lawn of the geology building. And then there's a brand new field directly north of the geology building. So it's going to be on the campus just off of 10th Street.
You said 10 to 3?
10 to 3, yeah,
Okay.
on June 4th.
Then geology building.
yeah, kind of between the 10th Street and the railroad
Hmm,
line, that area.
very good.
So I wanted to see if the committee or the board was interested in having a table. It's the same idea as before, where a variety of museum groups or vendors will be there to talk about the geological, the cultural, and the recreational significance of Indiana limestone as our state stone. And I think the county board could have, you know, a pretty good showing and tell who we are. But it's not something that I could personally staff, since I'll be running the festival otherwise. So if as a group we think it's a good idea, we could add that to number 4 on the list there.
Well, if I recall correctly, the plan had been to do this after I had chosen to leave because I was going to be gone. And then I agreed to help anyway, and I will absolutely agree to help if we decide that we're going to have that. And I have a parking permit, so I can park anywhere. I have a parking license, exactly.
It's
but I'm
meant to
happy
be,
help.
Because yes, you were the one who had volunteered the last time.
And then COVID came.
Mhm.
Now the war in Ukraine.
So I'm not sure what that would look like, if we would be an activity, if we're information distribution, if we're collecting names of volunteers for projects. I mean, there's a variety of things we could do. I'm happy to staff that, hopefully not alone.
It seems like it might be nice to have some kind of exhibit where we could highlight the Limestone Initiative website,
Uh-huh.
Yes.
because we've got that curriculum. I mean,
Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking of too, and I can't
There's a
remember.
lot of information.
Teachers, check in here,
Yeah.
and show you what it is.
The
Yeah.
rack cards.
Mhm, yeah.
You have the rack cards or examples?
I just picked one up.
Yeah, they're all in the,
Great.
we got it.
Mhm. That would be a great time to pass those out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we put some, and that's June
Fourth.
Fourth.
4th Saturday.
So, yeah, maybe I could talk with Polly and come up with some thoughts before our next meeting. Would that be useful?
Yeah. that'd be great.
That sounds great. Okay, well then,
No, we never had a launch.
No.
Right.
We always intended to do this Limestone Heritage thing.
Yeah, it was a dream.
And we've got it all there, and now we're having a little bit of trouble getting it all up and running, that's not now, we've always had a little trouble with that, but Wendy, that's part of what Wendy's trying to get done. But we've just been waiting to launch it, but this might be a good place to launch it.
Do a little soft launch.
And
exactly.
and then have, I don't know how to do, maybe it's just a digital exhibit, so we don't have to make a bunch of posters. You could just have some
Right.
computer screens and people can play with the
We'll
site.
do the QR code thingy.
I can probably figure it out. It's been, I'm rusty, but yeah.
It-
You just even have that right there, people could pop it up right on their phone.
I remember discussion about the dry stone walls and going back 3 years, and I dumped everything in the trash. I'm so ashamed. So I'm going on distant memory, but we at one point were thinking about, in terms of the surveying, we were thinking about training and bringing in volunteers. Yes, is that still a piece of it? This would be an ideal time
Mhm.
to ask people, would you like to put your name in as a potential volunteer? And that's the kind of thing that could be
Yeah.
also collected.
We'd have bullet points of different types of activities we're thinking of, whether it's limestone,
Check off
wall
what you would like to
survey.
do,
Yeah, whether it's,
sort of a survey.
historic home, something or other,
Volunteer
yeah. Be good.
So I am not making that up. That
You're not making that up. That did happen. You have the advantage of missing the whole fog in between amongst this group. So you're like, and you were there, and you were there.
Yeah. And maybe this is another, and let me just, before we get there, let me drop the other egg in my basket. We do have a slot next May, not this May, but next May, if we want it, at the Monroe County History Club to do a presentation on dry stone walls in Monroe County.
That's
Which we
wonderful.
Collected, put together
Yeah.
and bring folks in. I mean, I'm happy to work on PowerPoint and organize all that, but I absolutely cannot speak with any authority on anything to do with it. But I can certainly support the mechanics of doing something. And they're excited about it.
That'll be next
Skip was
May.
really excited
Yeah.
for next May, because that's Limestone Heritage Month, right?
So May is Historic Preservation Month. So we've got that month.
Okay, so
And then
he-
the June
he
is
said get back
Limestone.
with him because
So,
they're booked through January now.
So I would say if we can take May, then take May because it's historic preservation anyway. So we've got 2 adjacent months that we can really work with.
Okay, so.
And then Limestone Month Festival would be the following. I'm planning to make
Yeah,
that
so
an
it'd be good
annual
advertising
event.
for it.
All we need to do is tell me what month we want and he'll lock it in, because they want to do it.
Yeah, I think May sounds great. May
Yeah,
23.
preview. Yeah.
That was my other egg, so
Mhm.
I've laid them all now.
Susan, would you like to be added on to the Preservation Education Subcommittee?
Sure.
Okay, we'll add you in there. Well, that's exciting. We got a lot of updates on that one. Property owner notice group. I don't have any updates. I think that task looks good. We already accomplished it.
Was the notice sent this year?
I didn't see.
No,
Oh.
it was not. I got no direction for that. It wasn't.
I didn't
So was the
see.
notice finished? Like, did it get to a point that people felt good about it to send it? Or is it something that still needs edits and still needs to be sent?
I would just assert that we add Susan's credentials to it. I can explain that in a minute. And just send out what we sent last year and put spring 2022 as the date.
Change it to.
I think we had discussed at one time, one of our Zoom meetings, that was our plan, so I
Mhm.
concur.
And could somebody tell me what this is?
Go ahead.
Yes, you.
It's just a notice to remind people that they own historically designated property.
Oh.
So it goes to a small number of
great.
people, right?
Yeah, I do. Around a dozen people, and I can't remember what the details are of it. But
Maybe try to.
If you.
I think the idea came from that
It's all
couple
about
that
the-
bought the Matthews Mansion and they didn't realize.
Right. So
That's
it
all.
was, yeah, it was just to say, like,
It'd
we're
be
here
designated.
to consult you for,
That's an
um,
annual letter that goes out.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the intention of it, yeah.
To remind them of
and I think
if they're gonna make changes,
Okay.
last time.
And
I
then
think we had
also
our name-
the things that we could do to help, like if a neighbor is encroaching on their property, we could provide
Right.
assistance, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And we put our township on there so they can kind of get a feel for, we're
That's
representing
great.
the whole county.
You probably don't have anybody in Benton.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we need to update the board on that letter and
Yeah.
change the date. And
yeah.
Did I
Susan.
send this to somebody recently that was gonna work on it? And then this is
Do you want to send it to me and let me look at it? Since if I'm going to be at it, I'd like to read it. I can do that pretty quick.
I mean, I can send it out to the whole board, just don't get a group discussion going because it's out of court. So yeah, it's like 12, 13,
Yeah.
15 numbers that it goes to. What we have on file.
And these are these are their mailing addresses, not necessarily the property address of the site.
we would have to add that warrant. But
Cause I'm noticing like with the fields, cause that's their house, but that's not their historic.
Right,
property.
we always send
Same
this to
here.
where the
Yeah.
ownership
Oh, yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So, goes to the owner. Do I have, and this is the properties, so it's. That's how I would just download the information off of.
it's a very positive letter.
Mhm.
Did you
It's
write
a
the
good
letter,
letter.
Don? You worked on it, didn't you?
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it's a nice
Polly
letter.
and
Yeah.
Debbie and I worked on it.
Holly, Donna.
You too. Yeah.
Mhm.
I really
I
liked it.
was really pleased with the outcome.
I can,
Well, I'm sure that, I mean, those property owners don't change hands very often. do they?
there's not very many for me to check. I mean, we send them from our office with our postage,
Mhm.
with the commissioners.
So it comes
the
back to
commissioners-
you if it. it's
If
on-
it
on
bounces, it
delivery.
comes. Yeah. Okay. I'll resend that, I'll just resend that to everyone.
all see it,
so
yeah.
that, And then I can't remember if there was, were there specific, yeah, okay, Don and Debbie and Polly, you all could discuss it then more intensely. And you guys knowing who to send it to, I'll
Yeah.
put them
So
on the
send our
top.
comments to them if
I'll
they.
BCC everybody else, and then you guys would just reply to that committee.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And then
When there's our job done, we're supposed to draft a document.
last committee group, especially after today's discussion, which at the beginning of the meeting, which I thought was really useful. Is there anything you want to change or add to your work plan here for the demolition delay committee?
I guess for my part, I think we still need to have a meeting with Plan Commission executive in some way. I don't think we're ready to draft a document, but we want to leave that in there. And that, we might as well leave B in there as well, but maybe we want to add something about investigating an exit plan from the Plan Commission or from the planning department. That seems to be on the table in a serious way now.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the draft document is a big enough thing that it should be a separate letter, maybe even a later letter? Because it feels like review demolition delay examples and draft a document seem like two separate phases, and
It could easily be like that, but I mean,
it's fine.
as long as it's written down, I don't much care if it's. I can't think, Polly, of anything in addition, other than that's just gotten, we're just in the thick of it. So it's that, it may go some optional directions we don't really know about, but.
Okay. Do you
maybe
want
it's just-
to put in
maybe
there
it's
to
just
meet with
me,
the
but I still
planner?
feel like- I'm sorry.
Oh, that's
Go ahead.
okay. Oh, I was gonna ask if meeting with planning, but it's in there, the executive committee part.
Yeah, I'm personally a little bit in limbo after talking to Dave about who wants to be part of this conversation and who doesn't. I mean, he's kind of like, well, it's in your lap. If you don't want to be in planning, say so. But I think it's a little more complex than that, because there are other, director of plan commission for one thing, and county commissioners. I'd really like to know
They want.
what they want to see happen.
Yeah.
And have a content loaded conversation about what the options are. So I don't think, now I suppose we could just make a proposal and then watch it all fall out, but it seems like the more people who are organizing around the fall, the better. I don't-
Well, and I think a discussion about the pros and cons of each position, because I feel like, over the years, it's been pretty clear that there are pros and cons to
Yeah.
each one.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of, can we live with the cons of either where we are now or what we switch?
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe that's fine the way it is.
So the long and short is how it is.
Just because it's not on the list doesn't mean we can't just revisit the planning issue.
Sure.
Okay, so it sounds like kind of keep it as is. Any suggested changes from the whole group about priorities and the whole board options, next two sections?
Are these conferences occurring next month?
It is not next month, I don't think. I had the dates. Hold on.
That was the other thing, is I went to a camp in
Oh, yeah.
April.
Yeah, right before,
And then the world changed. didn't it?
exactly.
State conference.
And I, of course, threw all of that stuff out. I saw the name tag.
She just asked, and I thought it was going to be this year in September.
I thought I saw something about September.
Yeah.
That's what I
I'm
was
not sure.
wondering.
So we need to update when those conferences are.
Yeah, September 27th through the 30th.
For, is that preserving historic places, or is that?
That's preserving historic places. It's up at South Bend this year.
Okay,
And the camp will be the first couple of days.
Yeah.
okay,
Is that the State Department of Archaeology that does that?
Division of Historic Preservation and
Okay.
Archaeology in cahoots with IU Conference and
In cahoots with,
Indiana Landmarks. Those are all
and not
sponsored.
undermined by DNR.
They're all,
now is that still technically Cornelius O'Brien, or did that separate?
it used, no, what used to be a Brian.
I went when it was here, Cornelius O'Brien, Main Street, Indiana, together.
Yeah,
Is there a library here or somewhere of books to read?
Oh, like
A listing.
like in,
Where it says books and other literature, is there such a place where those things live, or?
do you have any historic preservation books like in a collection here, or,
A handful.
Um,
maybe.
and then I would say,
Section of the library?
yeah, I'd say like that whole, our favorite places in the Indiana room.
They messed with us so much.
I know.
don't even know
The
where
whole
it is.
Monroe County section of the Indiana room, I feel like could count.
Yeah.
And then, anything that's in that like American vernacular architecture type category. So I can't remember what numbers, architecture is, but like Henry Glass's book should be in there somewhere and stuff like that. And then, all those videos that are like Monroe County, what are those called? Like, well, there's a book that's Monroe County in Focus. There's a couple of those like WTIU documentaries, including like Maple Grove Road,
yeah.
stone walls and stuff.
If y'all would just ship me a private
Yeah.
email with one or two of your favorite
Yeah.
publications. Or
Yeah. There's one that I did, I can't remember, it was a Monroe County one. I laughed, I
vice versa.
cried. I yelled at the TV going, that's not quite right. But yeah, even, yeah, we could get like a Google Doc going or something with some of those on there.
Well, I mean, if there's a collection or you
Yeah.
can identify reading,
Mhm.
that's part of the education process, is
Yeah.
that these are the areas in the Indiana room where you can
Mhm.
research more on this.
I'm wondering, well, I guess this project priorities, this actively engaged in county development ordinance revision may be moot if we decide that we're not gonna participate in the county. So the primary objective there was to integrate our ordinance revisions and demolition delay, right?
And which item are you on right now?
Project priorities, procedure, time sensitive initiatives, actively engage in.
The one that's just number one.
Yeah, the one that's just number one there.
Yeah,
I feel like, and if we're able to be like kind of still in the loop on those things as they relate to us, I feel like we sort of need to make sure that we don't turn a deaf ear on them in case we do decide that we're in with all of them. So,
And there's still gonna be some tools that may be applicable.
yeah,
Like the historic adaptive reuse. There are a few things
Yeah.
where historic context will come into play.
yeah, that's right.
So do we think it's okay to keep that item on there and just
Yeah,
we engage with them as needed?
yeah, semi-actively.
It's slow going also on
I
our
know,
end
I know
too.
it is.
It's. We don't have a lot of money, so our staff is doing it all.
Mhm. Well, staff doesn't have anything else to do,
And,
right?
you know, the planning commission doesn't always agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tammy, what is the best way to approve the work plan? Should we make the changes? And by we, I mean you, because you're the one with the document. Thank you. Should you make the changes and then we approve it with the minutes the next meeting? Or can we just vote as a group to approve with the changes we've discussed tonight?
Good question. I've never made the changes to those work plans. That was something usually that I feel like Danielle actively
Okay.
made those changes and then would send me the updated work plans as they got updated throughout the year. Or as things got ticked off the list, she would just kind of keep track of those updates.
Okay, I took notes on what needs to be changed, so
I mean, you guys,
do that.
it's up to you if you want to throw up the final draft or if you want to just
Yeah, I think,
adopt it based upon the discussion.
Polly, if your intention is to put everything in there as we've discussed it tonight, I feel like we can approve based on that.
So I'll read off the list of what I have written and
Okay,
let's make sure that's all this, what we're all voting on. How
we'll
about
do that
that?
with minutes where we say like approve as amended.
Yeah. So nothing changed for subcommittees 1 and 2. For subcommittee 3, we wanted to have language changed from funding to the word support, as long as support is provided. So I'll change that. For subcommittee 4, add in participate in the Limestone Month Festival. And also adding Susan as a member to that subcommittee. For subcommittee 5, change it to send it out in the spring, since that's what we're doing this year. And then nothing for subcommittee 6. And nothing on the bottom.
And then just probably.
Oh, and then
update
the date changes on 1 and 2
camping, yeah,
for
1
the
and
bottom.
2.
Yeah, change that to September.
Now piggybacking off of Susan's question, now that I'm seeing number 4 and actually reading number 4, do we have an actual list from DHPA on literature that's approved?
I feel like I send that out a couple of times a year. Department of Historic Preservation
Archaeology.
Archaeology.
Okay.
It's
That's
the
the state of
state.
Indiana.
Mhm.
Got it, thank you.
It's division.
Or division, yeah.
Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology.
I can resend the thing that they sent us last
Okay,
year.
yeah,
There's,
that should be good.
and,
Yeah. So then we have that.
stuff in here last. Info provided. Which was their file. Oh, maybe not. I'll look around,
Okay,
see if I can find it.
yeah, because yeah, if they have an actual list, that'd be nice to see.
I know they've sent it to us before,
Yeah,
so. Well,
they probably titled it something else, something, some other place.
I really did.
Does Jeannie Reagan work for that? division?
Jeannie Reagan Dinius. She, I know she's in there for, cemeteries,
Yeah, she's doing
For
a talk for
everything.
me. on
She's-
cemeteries.
okay, yeah,
She's their survey person.
yeah.
Okay.
And she's
Okay.
ready for-
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
So if everyone is comfortable, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2022 work plan with changes as discussed. And then I will send a updated document to Tammy after the meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Now I'll call the roll. Duncan Campbell,
Yes.
Debbie Reed,
Yes.
Susan Snyder Salmon,
Yes.
Devin Blankenship,
Yes.
Doug Wilson,
Yes.
Don Maxwell,
Yes.
Don Hall,
Yes.
and Polly Root Sturgeon.
Yes.
That passes 8-0.
No Danielle.
No, no, no. And you know what? I'm gonna say Doug Wilson has not had his camera on this evening. I almost want to say that's a stipulation for when you're voting. We've made quorum and I'll look at that rule again, but it's possible that it just clicked in my mind that when I review those rules, when I send them out, we'll look at that and see if that'll change the vote at all. Just want to make certain we're not
Oh,
running afoul.
there's a requirement that they be on video when.
I think something like, I want to double check that now though.
Okay. So we'll just do
I'm
mine.
sorry, my camera is broken tonight. I'm on a different computer.
Right, so you might have just been an opinion and not a vote officially.
If I do an artist rendering of Doug on his computer with a broken camera, that worked.
You might have
Sounds
just
like
been an
It
opinion
does.
tonight.
Find somebody with a cell phone and have them swing it by.
Exactly. Makes it look like he's shaking his head, yes or no.
Little bobblehead.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Oh, that's good.
I think that's it for the evening. Good discussions, even though, and we had a
April 18th?
short session.
And we still need to go look at the room and discuss that
We
decision.
can
That's
walk
right.
down there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I will call to adjourn the virtual session and have fun looking at the rooms.
Thanks, Polly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys soon. Bye-bye.
My room question for you is there a need for us to switch rooms or it's just a choice?
It's a choice.
Okay,
Totally a choice.
I will point out one thing that I like about this room is that you can see the outside world. I don't think you can see in the other room.
I really like this room, but I'll go anywhere.
This group is, yeah.
We could vote, right?
Yeah, well, we should go look at the room to give it a chance. I don't
You've
want
got a
to,
long day. all
because it is a
over.
larger room and if people are more comfortable in a larger room.
We have
I
our
do.
newly installed little air filter up there.
As long as I can
Yeah,
back up,
Yeah.
and take my mask.
yeah,
off.
we're generally
Yeah.
Yeah, although,
Well,
good
we
enough
can go
space
check
in
it
here,
out.
yeah.
I'm
Just a
happy.
light
with
of
it.
water.
I would
Sometimes-
suggest
They do
that
do.
you all just
Okay.
take all of your things with you. I am gonna come back up here and turn off some stuff.
Thanks, Tammy.
we've had a lot of visitors, this room was claustrophobic.
Very close.
Yeah, I mean, if we had petitioners in here, we can also make them wait in the hall or there's,
And we could arrange another meeting if it was required, I mean, another room if it was required. right? If we had
or we
40
can maybe
Just have
like,
to give notice maybe on the door or something.
we're having to work through a couple of other meetings and how we're gonna construct those. I'm gonna leave the meeting right now. Thanks, CSE, Madison, for your help.